Today's Penina's perspective is about employee incentive schemes. There has been extensive research that shows that happy employees, incentivized employees, have a direct effect on your company's bottom line. There are a number of ways to incentivize employees, but one of the tools I want to talk about today is employee incentive schemes. By far, the most popular employee incentive scheme is the EMI, which stands for Enterprise Management Incentive Scheme. It is an HMRC scheme, and the way it works is that you enter into an agreement with an employee and you want to give her, say, 5% of the shares in the business. She is an option holder. So if she leaves the business for any reason whatsoever, the scheme lapses as if it never existed. Now, the next point that you need to consider in the EMI agreement is when are you going to allow her to exercise the option for her to become a shareholder as opposed to an option holder. And there are two main methods that you need to consider. The first one, and by far more simple one, is that the employee will be entitled to exercise her option on the sale of the business. And so basically the way the EMI is drafted is I grant you an option today over 5 shares in the company that you employee can exercise when we sell the business. And then on sale, what happens is the employee becomes a shareholder for 5 minutes because the purchaser will buy the shares of the employee, will pay the employee cash in return for the shares. So under this method, the employee is never a shareholder during the life of the business. The other method is performance related. You can say to the employee, I grant you an option over 5 shares in the business that you can exercise if we reach X% of profitability, or we reach £5 million turnover, or you reach your personal target, whatever the personal targets are for that employee. And then what happens under this option is that once the performance condition has been met, the employee exercises the option and becomes a shareholder in the business. And then we need to have here another conversation, which we didn't need to have under the method of sale. The conversation we need to have here is, once the employee exercised her option, what type of shareholder do you want her to be? For example, are you happy for her to say, have right to dividend, but no voting rights? What happened if the employee wanted to leave after exercise? Are you happy to buy the shares back off her? Most people will say, well, if she's a good leaver, I will buy the shares back off her. But if she's a bad leaver, I don't want to. So you have to have that conversation, and what you might have to do is to create a separate class of shares for that employee. So your shares will be founder shares and her shares will be, for example, executive shares, which will have certain rights that attach to her class of shares. So these are the two main methods. When we grant the option on day one, today, your accountant will value the shares in the company and will agree the valuation with the revenue. So say your accountant agreed the valuation to be £3.50 per share. When the employee comes to exercise the option, it may be that each share worth £350 because the company has grown and is doing well. The employee only need to pay £3.50 per share. Another good thing about the EMI is that it is very tax efficient. When you grant the option over the shares to the employee, even though you're giving the employee something of value, there is no income tax to pay and no national insurance contributions. Similarly, when the employee exercises the option, no income tax, no national insurance contributions. The only time that the employee has to pay tax for the shares is when she sells the shares. But even then, it's a favorable tax treatment because she holds EMI shares. But also for the company, it is a tax efficient way. You can tax deduct the expense of setting up the employee share scheme. And I've probably set up in the last 10 years more than 100 EMIs. And it has proven to be a very popular, very successful scheme to set up to incentivize employees. That was Penina's perspective on employee incentive schemes.